Surprise, surprise, all these manager candidates that Manchester United have been linked to are now being ruled out. There's only one manager that we've had talks with that we've been linked to that hasn't been ruled out. Is it nearly over? Is it at the end? I mean, is it going to be this manager? Is it going to be Ten Hag? Is it going to be somebody else? Because Rob Dawson's reporting that INEOS want a yes man in charge. But I will say one thing about Rob Dawson. He was the guy that said, Ollie to Besiktas is done. And then like 2 hours later, Besiktas announced their new manager. And it was not Ollie. But I'm going to tell you something quickly before we get into the news. David Ornstein said he doesn't even know anymore. He's just guess. He can't guess. David Ornstein's basically said with the Manchester United manager situation, he said, nobody knows. People are just guessing. That's what David Ornstein said. Because this manager's been ruled out, that manager's been ruled out. David Ornstein's saying, look, he's bored of guessing. You've just got to wait. But what we are getting is managers ruled out, which is really good. Because as I said, the Southgate story made no sense. I've been telling you guys for ages, do not believe the Southgate story. It makes no sense. That is finally being ruled out. Finally, among other candidates like De Zerbi, Poch and more. So it was said by Paul Hurst and Shah Dunker that Man United have called their interest in Richard Pochettino. There's been 3 or 4 sources over the last 2 days to say we've called our interest in Pochettino and we're not entering talks with him. We then had John Cross of the Mirror, who isn't the most reliable source, but he said Man United were keen on Southgate, but have moved on because the timeline does not align, is what he is saying. But by a more reliable source in Matt Law, it's been said that Gareth Southgate put all contract talks with England on hold until after the Euros and has also refused to talk to any clubs such as Manchester United who have shown interest in him during preparations. We also had Fabrizio Romano saying, well, INEOS admire Southgate, there's not been any advanced talks, there's not been any communication. So we can finally rule Southgate out. We ruled Tuchel out yesterday. We can rule Poch out today. Who else can we rule out this manager stuff? De Zerbi. Romano said no meetings are taking place with Poch and De Zerbi as of yet. I mean, we could go in for a meeting for De Zerbi, but considering we, won the FA Cup nearly 3 weeks ago, we're in our 3rd week. I think if we've been planning on sacking Ten Hag since January, we wouldn't wait till 3 weeks after the season's over to bring in De Zerbi. We'd have had talks earlier if we actually wanted De Zerbi, which means we probably don't want De Zerbi that much, which means if we sacked Ten Hag for De Zerbi, it's incredibly insulting. So you're probably thinking, well, Alice, who is that candidate that's left? Like, who is the manager candidate that is left? Because if you're not getting Tuchel, you're not getting Potter. Well, actually, we could get Potter, but he's about to join Leicester. You're not getting, McKenna, who was heavily linked. We're not getting, De Zerbi. We're not getting Pochettino. You'll be thinking, well, Alice, who is that candidate that is left? Well, that only leaves one. And that is Thomas Frank. Now, this doesn't mean we're getting Thomas Frank, but he's the only man that Man United have had talks with that's not been ruled out. Thomas Frank. Does that mean we're getting Thomas Frank? No, because David Ornstein literally said this on the Man United manager situation. I've given up predicting, it just needs to end. So that doesn't mean we're getting Thomas Frank. But Ornstein said, I don't know, it just needs to end. Now, what do I feel about Thomas Frank? Better than De Zerbi, I think he is, which is an unpopular opinion. I'd rather have Thomas Frank than De Zerbi at Manchester United next season. But is he better than Ten Hag? I mean, he's scored Ten Hag in all the games he's played against Ten Hag, but no. I think Thomas Frank is a good manager, and I actually like Thomas Frank. And I think he's done a great job at Brentford, and I think he can take that step up and be a really good manager. But is he worth sacking Ten Hag for? In my opinion, no. That 2 trophies in 2 years, you replace him with Thomas Frank. I get sacking Ten Hag for Tuchel. I get it. That makes sort of sense. I get sacking Ten Hag for Pep Guardiola. But sacking Ten Hag for Thomas Frank, and I like Thomas Frank, doesn't make sense. I'd like Ten Hag to stay. If it is between Ten Hag and Thomas Frank, I'd like Ten Hag to stay. I prefer Thomas Frank to about 3 of the other candidates we've been linked to, but I would like Ten Hag to stay. I also think, like, charisma-wise, media-wise, Thomas Frank lacks, which people criticise Ten Hag for. Which brings me into the Yes Man story. So this is a story that's been doing the rounds on Twitter, and a lot of people are getting angry and frustrated about it. And I think, to be honest, it's come from Rob Dawson, who said 4 days ago Ollie was going to Besiktas and he was wrong, and he got kicked out of the press conferences for being wrong, and he got kicked out of Man United journalism for a little bit because he was writing fake leaks. So just to let you know, Rob Dawson is what I call a wind-up merchant. He likes to write stories to wind up people, which is why I'm surprised he hasn't wrote a story about Southgate more yet. But he said this: Incoming Manchester United sporting director Ashworth wants a yes man rather than someone that will challenge the recruitment department over the makeup of the squad. I feel like yes man is, a yes man manager is a really bad way to describe that. What Ashworth wanted at Brighton, and we always talk about the Brighton structure and how we'd love the structure of a club like Brighton, is a manager that was a head coach, where he did the overlays on recruitment, and that manager would be, let the board, let the people above them make the decisions, but have a slight input, rather than someone like Ten Hag, who may want power when it comes to transfers, because Ten Hag said that himself. He wants power when it comes to transfers. He wants to say, which means that what Ten Hag wants doesn't necessarily align with maybe what INEOS want and what Dan Ashworth wants. Now, I think the word saying Dan Ashworth wants a yes manager, I feel is very negative. I feel like Dan Ashworth's being painted in this negative light because people are saying, oh, it's Dan Ashworth that wants Southgate. Dan Ashworth hasn't even got the job. Dan Ashworth's on gardening leave. I can't believe people are painting him in this weird light. I'm happy we brought in Dan Ashworth. I'm just annoyed that this whole process has taken so long. He's proven to be one of the best at his job. This nonsense that he wants a yes manager, he'll want someone that he can work with, yeah. And Ten Hag, would probably want more power than INEOS want to give a manager, for sure. But that doesn't mean he's going to bring in Southgate because he wants a yes manager. I think that Rob Dawson is, personally, in my opinion, trying to bait people into reaction. It was also said Manchester United are hopeful of concluding their end-of-season review this week, although club sources insist there's no set time frame for the process. Erik ten Hag remains in the dark about whether he will come as manager. Now, end of the week. I mean, it has to be done this week. There's no way we can go into a fourth week of this. I think the longer and longer it goes on, the more and more Ten Hag stays. I think the media have been doing a complete guessing game these last 3 weeks. Have actually known nothing, because even the Muppeteers said they've got no new information since the FA Cup final other than INEOS had talked with these managers. Nothing new. INEOS are not giving anything away. While INEOS are taking their time, it's incredibly frustrating, and the treatment of Ten Hag has been an absolute disgrace from INEOS. They're taking their time. They're not leaking anything to the media, like with the Omar Barada story. So I just think the media have been doing absolute guesswork this last couple of weeks. I think the next manager will be someone who's not been linked to, or the next manager will be Ten Hag. But I think the longer and longer it goes on, the more and more likely it will be Ten Hag. And they won't necessarily announce that. We just might be hearing talks of all the end of season reviews over, and they like Ten Hag as well. But it's annoying how long Erik ten Hag remained in the dark. It's not fair on Ten Hag. It's not fair on the players. It's not fair on the fans. It's not fair on anybody. It's getting in the way of our transfer plans. Like, we need to move on and get it sorted, because how long INEOS is taking is getting beyond embarrassing. Which brings us into the story. Are we on track? Well, Rob Dawson added this. Manchester United remain convinced they are on track with their summer plans despite delaying the decision on the manager position. Club bosses has assured representatives of senior players that efforts to strengthen the squad are on course, even while Ten Hag's future is up in the air. Well, we know who we want. We're just not really going for them. So, I mean, I want to see two signings in June. We're halfway through June nearly. I want to see 2 signings in June. I want to see a third signing just before pre-season. I'm not feeling that way. But they did say this. United reign confidence of positives. They'll have a positive summer, although sources have said that Ratcliffe and Blanc have admitted to the staff that the recruitment department will not be up to full speed until Ashworth's in place. I think, to be honest, next summer will be our big INEOS summer. I think this summer is that trial, getting everyone in place summer where it might not be the best. I think next summer we'll see what INEOS can do in the transfer window. I don't think we can have, off what INEOS do with the manager and off what INEOS do in the transfer window, we can have a feeling of what they might do, but we can't fully judge them until, they're 2-3 years in place. We can't, next transfer window will probably be when they get to real action, which is annoying because I feel like you've come in January, you could have done stuff sooner. Let's talk about this next story. So apparently we are working on transfers. Rob Dawson said work on incomings and outgoings at Manchester United is being done by Technical Director Jason Wilcox and Director of Football Negotiations Matt Hargreaves and Chief Scout Steve Brown. So apparently we're working on the ingoings and outgoings. I mean, Amari Fawcett has left. Casemiro may leave. There's nothing really new to add other than rumours, but we know who we want to buy. We know who we want to sell. And I've done a video on that. It was said as well, both Hargreaves and Brown have spoken to club and representatives over the last week in an effort to bring in new players. Branthwaite and João Neves, I know we've had talks with. Kirkes, we've had talks with. I'm not sure who else we've had talks with. Potentially Elise. There's reports saying that United are going to go in for Elise soon. But listen, people, please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below to Alice Talks if you're new and want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and more. We're meant to get clarity on the manager situation this week. Although, as Ornstein said, everybody's guessing. Nobody has a clue. They just need to tell us what's going on. Everyone is saying it's clarity this week, which means, I don't know, because they said that last week. But if you want to stay up to date on all the latest when we finally get a decision on the manager and all the transfer news, please do subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.